I now call to speak John Stanyer, who is our prospective parliamentary candidate for the constituency of Hazel Grove in Greater Manchester.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like many people of my generation, I was too young to vote at the time of the referendum when Britain decided to join the EEC. I was only 11 years old at the time. These days, it would appear to be taken for granted by the main political parties, and I'm afraid by those in the media, that all young people are pro-Europe and that all young people support a European superstate. Well, I've news for those people. We don't. However, young people have been at the receiving end of considerable pro-European propaganda. Propaganda that has been fed to them by the European Commission through their enormous propaganda budget. Not many people know, but the Commission controls a so-called information budget of over £200 million each year. This money is paid by the taxpayer, and this money is being used to deliberately mislead people, the ordinary people of Europe. And it's used in particular to rubbish any person or any organisation that speaks out and opposes their grand plan for Europe. I think this puts into context the relatively small amount of money that our party is spending to try and gain a referendum. I appeal to young people in particular. Don't take democracy for granted. Support the referendum party and secure a full and fair debate on Europe before it's too late. Thank you. I now have great pleasure in introducing one of my dog's favourite people, our next speaker, and that is Robin Page. He is known to millions of people throughout the land as a writer for the Daily Telegraph and in country magazines. His face is familiar to us all because he is the person responsible for the programme One Man and His Dog, as well as other programmes for Anglia TV. Robin Page is deeply committed to the British countryside. He is one of the principal promoters of the Countryside Restoration Trust. As he says, we want farmers, wildlife and landscape to be in harmony. We want sympathetic, responsible farming. Robin Page also manages his family farm in Cambridgeshire. We are delighted that he is our prospective parliamentary candidate for Cambridgeshire South. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Robin Page.
Ladies and gentlemen, when I was invited to speak at this conference, I almost declined. Why should I want to speak to a bunch of failures? And you're all failures. You're sad people, because I'll tell you how you have failed. Because each year the European Union spends millions, hundreds of millions of pounds on brainwashing, and each one of you has failed to be brainwashed. So I decided I would come here too, and we could all be failures together. And how much has the great EU paid to brainwash me and brainwash you? This year it will be an astonishing £220 million. Not EQs, not euros, not Clarkos, but £220 million sterling. 130 million from the Commission itself, and another 90.5 million from the Information and Communication Policy budget. When this last time appeared on the budget, it was going to be a mere 55.1 million. But so important is it to the Eurocrats that they upped the figure to 90.5, an increase in 1995 of over 68%. That is £222 million paid by the EU out of our money to win our bodies and our souls, a propaganda effort that can match the best of the Third Reich or the old Soviet Empire. Don't clap too long, as Lord McAlpine will go mad. It is a programme of misinformation, deception and distortion that, if I understand them correctly, is supported by our government and opposition alike. They're in good company. It would appear that they have joined the ranks of Lord Haw Haw. Worse still, you read Oswald Mosley. Yes, Oswald Mosley, the despised British fascist leader. If I understand him and them correctly, his Europe is the Europe of Major, Blair and Ashdown, a Europe in which the people of Britain have had no democratic say. The propaganda methods are so basic that one has even been lifted straight out of the old Soviet Empire. In the communist days, the Soviets launched a campaign called "Let Us Build Socialism Together." Last year, the Commission launched 3 information campaigns, including, believe it or not, "Let Us Construct Europe Together." These propaganda programmes cost an incredible £41 million. The idea to brainwash started as long ago as 1954 and is still going strong. In 1993, Willy de Klerk, a Belgian European commissioner, unelected of course, was advocating targeting the young because it is strategically judicious to act where resistance is weakest. His next target was women. Women, E-N, not I-N. They are instinctively inclined to recognise more intuitively and more rapidly than men the advantages of a better future. The sad man had obviously never met Edwina Currie. The official Union report explains quite clearly the purpose of information. It is one of the instruments for citizens to think along European lines, to shape public opinion, because the general public is not yet sufficiently committed to the European ideal. This is frightening, spine-chilling stuff. This is not information. It is blatant, crude propaganda. It is an attempt to brainwash a continent. Sorry about that, Lord McAlpine. Amazingly, there appears to be many modern-day quislings to help them. In 1993, the Commission launched Jean Monnet Action, lectures and units on European integration. The actions include Jean Monnet chairs, given to a lecturer or a professor dedicating himself to a 3-year programme on European integration. The prize, £48,720 tax-free on top of the usual salary. Remember, the Jean Monnet chairs, they should be renamed the Lord Haw Haw chairs. Then we have organisations such as the European Movement, starring Edwina Currie, whose income is listed as grants and donations, How much comes from the Commission's disinformation budget, Edwina? Why don't you tell us? The European Commission lets out part of the truth. In 1995, it gave £324,000 to the European Movement International Secretariat, and another £20,000 was given specifically to the United Kingdom section to inform about EU policies and refute misinformation. Ho, ho. So far this year, the European Commission has granted £25.4 million to pro-European organisations. It has even spent over £6 million to encourage town twinnings. Twinning is about linking European elite with European elite. It is yet another part of the brainwashing process. So with all this money washing about, what did the Commission spend on the prevention of fraud last year? Fraud officially calculated at £10 billion and reliably estimated unofficially at £30 billion. They spent a derisory £4 million. It's pathetic. And oh yes, with £220 million to spend on information, what information did they give us about BSE? And I've got cattle and I'm a farmer, I wanted information about BSE. They gave us absolutely nothing. In fact, they gave us misinformation. As long ago as the 12th of October 1990, and please note 1990, we have from the information-loving European Commission the following: we must remain cool, so avoid unfavourable reactions in the marketplace. We must no longer mention BSE, and it should no longer appear in any agenda for forthcoming meetings. We are going to request officially that the United Kingdom ceases to publish any further results of their research. (1990), not March this year when Douglas Hogwash suddenly discovered it. It is necessary to minimise the BSE affair by using disinformation. It would be advisable to state that the press has a tendency to exaggerate. Well done, the Commission's Consumer Policy Unit. You get the Joseph Stalin Award for open, honest government. And what has the information budget given us on IACS payments? Oh, you haven't heard of them? What a surprise! IACS is the Integrated Administration and Control System lovingly given to us under CAP reform. In 1992, CAP reform was supposed to lower cereal prices by 35%, and as a result, it was agreed to compensate farmers. They were to be compensated at a rate of between £100 and £200 for every acre cultivated. Simple. Those payments are still being paid annually, and last year it cost you and me £1.6 billion in Britain alone. There is only one problem. Cereal prices did not fall, and so £1.6 billion was paid out for a fall that did not happen. Well done, Douglas Hogwash again. Funny, if they spend £220 million on information, why couldn't they inform us about that? 13 British farmers received over £500,000 each last year. The Ministry of Agriculture taking a leaf from the Commission's book on open government, will not say how many of these are annual subsidy millionaires. Another 5,000 farmers had over 50,000 each for doing nothing. And all this money is wrecking the countryside, wrecking rural communities, and wrecking wildlife. There's a new saying now in my neck of the woods. The October farmer is starry-eyed. It's Ajax time and set aside. This speech is depressing me so much that I'll end with a word about the wonderful single currency. You guessed it. The Commission is spending more on the promotion of that than on the prevention of fraud, which is quite independent of the £16 million it has already spent on its campaign, Euro, one currency for Europe. Incidentally, Mr. De Silguet, the unelected commissioner in charge of EMU, recently said that if the single currency does not come about, there would be a great danger of seeing Europe drift towards a free trade zone. This, he admits, is something we have tried to avoid for the past 25 years. Silly me, silly you, and we thought Europe was about free trade. Thank you, Mr. De Silguet, for telling the truth 25 years later. The papers say, including Tory candidate barking Boris Johnson, that all the people here today are filthy rich. They are wrong. I am a simple English peasant. And I'm glad to say that I've met several other peasants that I've been around today. I've got a warning for Mr. Major. Mr. Major, we peasants are revolting. But although I'm just a country boy, I study language. I like the word euro. It means that all those wanting a single currency are not Euro lovers, they're not Europhiles, they are Euro-nators. This makes Edward Heath Britain's great Euronator-in-chief. And at the election, while Edward Heath is urinating for Brussels, I will proudly be standing for the Referendum Party, fighting for basic freedom, basic democracy and basic truth. Thank you.